China has imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian seafood exports in retaliation for Canada's tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. The seafood industry says it is struggling to understand the immediate effects of the tariffs. Kris Vascotto is the executive director of the Nova Scotia Seafood Alliance. So the tariffs from China are in effect. How does that tariff or these tariffs operate differently from the ones we've been hearing about in the U.S.?
Well, one of the big differences that you have with this tariff is we know that it's in place now, whereas with the ones with the US, they seem to be kind of on and off, and we have the next deadline coming in early April. But as we ship product into China, what happens is it's actually the Chinese company, the Chinese importer, is the importer of record. So it's actually the duties are being paid by the Chinese company. Whereas when we move wild fish and seafood into the US, it's generally a Nova Scotian company that acts as that importer of record. So they're the ones that actually are going to be paying the tariff, and then they're going to be the ones trying to actually collect those tariffs from their American customers down the line.
And so what effect might these tariffs from China have on the buyers there then?
Well, it's hard to say because you really are never really very conscious about what's going on actually within China itself. We can expect that there is going to be some pushback from a Chinese consumer really being hesitant to pay that additional 25% cost on any item that comes out. And really that just links to the economic headwinds we're all facing. So we're expecting those Chinese buyers to step up or to step in and say, look, we're going to have to see some relaxation on price really within the Nova Scotian economy, such that they can still be able to bring the product in and actually be able to sell it to their customers.
It's worth pointing out that the Chinese tariffs are against all seafood. Presumably, some of the fisheries will be better suited to cope with that than others. Is that right?
Well, that's very true. I mean, if you look at any scope of wild fish and seafood, we have a multitude of different places where we put it, right? If we look at Nova Scotia particularly, we are looking at probably maybe about $460 million of live lobster exports that we put into China. And that represents maybe about 40% of our live exports that we put in worldwide. Once again, about 40% goes into the US. And so what we have is we have a breadbasket of customers that we can approach. Whereas for some other products that are out there, things that come to mind are whelk, sea cucumber. Really, at that point, what we're looking at is the Chinese market is the only market that we can go into those products. So the impact of these tariffs, though the numbers of those other products I'm talking about might seem smaller in the big scheme of things of the Nova Scotian economy, the impacts can be much greater because you're seeing a very, very tight pushback that's going to happen on price, which might impact whether some of those fisheries even move forward this year.
Of course, the history to all of this is that China's actions are retaliatory for Canada's tariffs on electric vehicles made in China. How is that going over with people in the fishery?
Obviously, it's never goes over well when you have a tariff fight of any type. In this case, yes, there has been discussions about the fact that the strategic attack, so to speak, on the Nova Scotian wild fish and seafood industry by the Chinese tariffs does seem to be in response for something that has absolutely nothing to do with the seafood sector as a whole. At the same time, we do hope that the federal government does recognize this and gives it the same sort of disproportionate response in looking at the seafood sector to make sure that we remain viable during this period of time. At the same time, there's an opportunity for all parties to get back to the table and actually have some real discussions to make sure that this doesn't persist for too long. There's definitely a resolution out there somewhere. We just need the two parties to sit down and come to one.
And in the meantime, and particularly with the U.S. tariffs, what kind of strategies can companies employ? I mean, does it matter if the Americans come to us to buy the product across our border and drive it south themselves, or does it matter who is taking it across the border?
That's a great question, Tom. When you think about it, at the end of the day, no matter what, the U.S. consumer is going to be asked to swallow 25% more cost for their wild fish and seafood products. Now, what's happened is the U.S. customer has said repeatedly, whether you're in the Boston show or whether you're talking to buyers otherwise, they're saying, no, our customers are not going to be able to take that 25%. In fact, they're holding fast on the price points that they have now, whether there's tariffs there or not. What that's going to mean is that the tariffs do come into place, you're going to get these very, very strong pressures to actually start rolling back prices all the way through the value chain. So whether you're a buyer, a processor, or a harvester, you're going to see your prices begin to claw back as you try and be able to deliver on a price point that the consumer in the U.S. will still be able to purchase the product.
And do you agree with the government's seemingly wait-and-see approach here, or do you want to see them take some action?
Well, it's really difficult to say what action should be taken until we know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, if we look at the Chinese tariff situation, we know that those tariffs were announced, 2 weeks ago? We knew that they were come into place. They are now here. The question is, what is that going to mean from the Chinese market themselves? Are they still going to be moving the same volumes of product? Is there still going to be a price point that they can be moved? Is there any elasticity in that price? That remains to be resolved, and we'll see that over the coming period of time. At the same time, as we look with the U.S. market, we're asking ourselves, A, is there going to be a tariff? If there is a tariff, how long is it going to last? We're going to see these for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 6 months. At this point, we're getting no clarity on it. And at the same time, if you follow the U.S. media, there's now discussions ongoing about whether it will be 25% for all products or whether they'll come at some substantially small number for some products and study go up from there. So at this point, we still don't know exactly what we need the supports for in order to be able to deal with what problem we're facing. I can say the supports that have been offered with relation to market diversification have been fantastic. That's ongoing all the time, and hopefully we begin to see some results coming out of those.
Yeah, lots of questions, as you say. I appreciate your insights on this, Kris Vascotto. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.